Bombing of St. Petersburg. Dozens of drones attack Putin's hometown. Explosions on the streets of Sochi. This has never happened before. The AFU destroyed an assault regiment near Liman. 30 cargo, 2 hundredths. The rest surrendered as prisoners. Azov is entering Donetsk. The city is under full drone control. Pushilin has disappeared. Shocking inside information. At this very moment, the FSB is seizing power and removing Putin. A global aviation crisis. Airlines are canceling flights en masse due to fuel shortages. American Army. U.S. aircraft carriers off the coast of Iran are running out of food. They've run out of meat. Russian military police have been ordered to send all offenders to the front lines. The U.S. is stopping arms supplies to Europe, while Putin prepares a Baltic operation in the coming days. Budanov has given the order. Ukrainian special services are preparing to eliminate Lukashenko. Defense Minister Fedorov is changing the course of the war. Soldiers at the front will be replaced by ground robots and invulnerable drones. A drunk Medvedev declares war on Europe. Greetings, my name is Yulia Kokan, and right now the main news. But first, please like this video and subscribe to our channel so we don't lose touch on the vastness of YouTube. And we start with great news from our unmanned systems forces. This time, our USF destroyed another Panzer system. This time in occupied Mariupol. Also, during the night, the SSO destroyed the Rubicon base near Mariupol. It was burning quite intensely there. Meanwhile, things were restless in Russia again. On the night of April 17th, drones once again attacked the Leningrad region. The Telegram channel of Leningrad Governor Alexander Drozdenko reports 12 UAVs were shot down overnight. In the Pulkovo Heights area, shrapnel damaged a car and building windows. Debris falls were also recorded in the Vyborg district. According to preliminary information, there are no casualties. The Russian Ministry of Defense reported their brilliant air defenses shot down 62 Ukrainian drones. Drones were downed over Astrakhan, Belgorod, Bryansk, Voronezh, Kursk, Leningrad, Novgorod, and annexed Crimea. Governor Vyacheslav Gladkov personally reported details of the drone activity in the Belgorod region. According to him, 2 people were injured as a result of the drone attack. In Shebekino, a commercial facility was damaged. And in the village of Nikolskoye, Belgorod district, a drone struck a bus. The driver managed to escape. Meanwhile, in the Russian city of Tuapse, debris clearance continued after a drone attack that occurred the day before. According to the governor's latest data, 2 people were killed and 7 were injured. They also continued to extinguish the fire at the marine terminal to eliminate the fire that broke out as a result of a UAV attack on the night of April 16th. 177 people and 56 units of equipment were involved, including from the main directorate of the Ministry of Emergency Situations of Russia for the Krasnodar territory. As a reminder, in the Krasnodar territory, the Tuapse oil refinery caught fire as a result of an attack on the night of April 16th. In addition, 1 fire source was recorded in the sea near the shore. Ash from the fire at the refinery also fell on the residential areas of the city. Meanwhile, local residents are writing on social media about the appearance of a film on the water's surface in the coastal zone. Well, what can I say? I definitely like news like this. As they say, burn, burn bright, so it doesn't go out. Reading the comments under previous episodes, I see that many people watch us from Europe, Kazakhstan, Moldova, and even the USA. We Ukrainians are grateful for your support and proud that we have sensible viewers. Write under this episode which country you're watching from and whether they support our struggle against the empire of evil. I always enjoy reading your comments, but for now,
every voice matters. Join our community, support independent journalism, and help us bring you the truth from.
And to the news from the front. Ukrainian fiber optic FPV drones destroyed about 30 Russian occupiers in the forests near Liman in the Donetsk region. Footage of the combat work of the drone operators of the Signum Battalion of the 59th SBS Brigade follows. And the laser group from the National Guard of Ukraine bombed a cluster of BM-30 Smerch in the enemy's rear. This is a unique unit. It conducted a special operation in the Luhansk region. The equipment was located deep behind the line of combat contact. The operation was carried out jointly with the North Regional Radio Electronic Intelligence Center.
The Lazars sent their own strike drones to the designated area. As a result, a BM-30 Smerch was destroyed, a Slepok-1 automated fire control system complex, a transport loading vehicle. Another Smerch was hit. Russian MLRS continued to burn thanks to the Lazars group.
Always the same finale for the Russians. And after a meeting with the 3rd Spartan Operational Brigade, named after Colonel Petro Bolbochan of the National Guard, drone operators inspected the enemy's readiness in the Pokrovsk direction. Their verdict: infantry camouflage skills 0 out of 10, enemy cover 0 out of 10, personnel transport equipment 0 out of 10. Meanwhile, a Russian occupier, a Nazi from St. Petersburg named Alexander Zhuchkovsky, who's been fighting against Ukraine since 2014, said that the Russian military police were ordered to find fault with Russian soldiers. For what, you might ask? It's quite simple. For various violations, and then they're just transferred to assault units, since Russia's prisons are already nearly empty. And it's unclear where they'll get the meat for new meat grinder assaults. As for me, I never tire of admiring the courage and heroism of Ukrainian warriors. They hold the front line and stand against a massive horde that significantly outnumbers them. So I urge you to support the armed forces, and if you can't do it financially, write some words of support in the comments. I know they're watching us. The Russians are moving reserves to eastern Ukraine to seize the entire Donetsk region by September. The Financial Times reports this, citing sources in the main intelligence directorate. The Russians have claimed many times they're about to seize the whole region, but that about to has dragged on for over 2 years. Nevertheless, as journalists write, the Russian armed forces are preparing a new offensive in southeastern Ukraine, deploying 20,000 troops from the reserve. But our military is more optimistic. Here's how a serviceman with the call sign Alex reacted to this news.
Someone over there is planning to seize the Donetsk region. I'm not surprised by the news of a possible transfer of 20,000 soldiers to achieve the goal of seizing the entire Donetsk region. I'm 99% sure that the figure of 20,000 bodies includes support and command units as well. So it's not exclusively infantry. But even if it were, this amount is literally nothing for offensive operations of an operational or operational tactical nature, given the current rates of disposal.
Moreover, the defense forces are putting military equipment in places where the Russians were sure they couldn't be reached. So let's believe in our military and support them. That way, the deoccupation of the Donetsk region will be even faster. Meanwhile, the first European airlines have begun reducing the number of flights and raising ticket prices due to shrinking fuel supplies, due to the conflict in the Middle East. And if the situation persists, analysts predict further capacity cuts, flight suspensions, and the introduction of additional ticket surcharges. As The Independent reports, Germany's Lufthansa has announced that it will soon suspend flights of a total of 27 aircraft that are currently serving its subsidiary Air. Has 4 older planes that are branded with the Lufthansa name, thus becoming the very first major airline carrier to officially announce such a significant move in the industry. In addition to this, the Dutch national carrier, which is KLM Royal Dutch Airlines, will also be cancelling 160 scheduled flights over the course of the next month due to ongoing operational challenges and constraints. To and from Amsterdam's Schiphol. The Express is reporting on this. Passengers affected by these changes will be rebooked on the next available flight. The airline noted that it is not experiencing problems with jet fuel supplies, but made this decision as a cost-saving measure in light of rising fuel prices. But that's not all. Air France and KLM have announced ticket price increases due to rising fuel costs. Last month, they introduced an additional surcharge to compensate for the rapid rise in aviation fuel prices. At that time, the cost of a round-trip economy class ticket increased by an additional €50. And Britain's Virgin Atlantic has introduced an additional fuel surcharge of $70 on economy class tickets, while premium economy prices rose by $240 and business class tickets by $490. Earlier, it was reported that one of Italy's largest and due to increased demand during the Easter holidays, rather than the war in Iran or the closure of the Strait of Hormuz. Business Insider reported that airlines are canceling flights en masse due to the war in Iran. The airline industry is facing a crisis due to fuel shortages and rising prices. What do you think of this situation? Let us know what you think in the comments. I'll be sure to read them. Now here's some news. Just listen to this. American aircraft carriers off the coast of the Middle East are running out of food. Sailors are complaining of hunger and empty trays. This is according to USA Today. We're talking about 2 American ships deployed in the region. According to relatives of the military personnel, crews are receiving reduced portions and sharing food among themselves. For example, for lunch, they might be given a little ground meat with a tortilla or a handful of boiled carrots with a dry patty. There's also a shortage of hygiene products on the ships. The Tripoli has been at sea for over itself will say to that. Putin may decide to go to war against Europe as early as this spring before the window. There's almost no chance of victory. That's why the Kremlin might opt for a new escalation. It could involve an attack on one of the Baltic states to test if NATO is truly ready to defend its allies. If Europe doesn't rearm in time and the West shows weakness,
security of its western flank, Russia is ready to emerge from the war, less protected, more embittered, and more dangerous for Europe than before the war. If Putin truly intends to impose his vision of European security on the continent, he may decide that time is not on his side as Europe rushes to rearm and launch an attack against a Baltic neighbor to demonstrate that NATO Article 5 is essentially a dead letter.
but that's not all. The commander-in-chief of the Swedish Armed Forces, Mikael Bydén, stated that Russia could try to seize one of the islands in the Baltic Sea as early as tomorrow. Not for the sake of the island itself, but for another reason. To test how quickly NATO will start arguing about who should respond and if they will respond at all. According to the Swedish commander, almost any island would suit the Kremlin. It doesn't necessarily have to be something large-scale, just enough action to challenge the alliance and see what happens politically. Swedish military intelligence believes that Russia is already capable of conducting limited attacks near Sweden and in a few years, more large-scale operations to seize territory. At the same time, as Reuters writes, the United States is delaying weapons deliveries to European countries due to the war with Iran. According to the agency, American officials have warned some European colleagues that deliveries of certain types of weapons under previously signed contracts will be postponed. This will specifically affect the Baltic and Scandinavian countries. Washington explains the situation by the need to direct resources to the Middle East and points to the depletion of stockpiles. Reuters does not specify whether this decision will affect Ukraine in any way. And what do you think Russia is really up to? Is the FSB removing Putin from power right now? No, I haven't lost my mind. I just saw a new prophecy from Dmitry Gordon.
I am absolutely certain, without any doubt whatsoever, that right now, before our very eyes, at this very moment, the Russian FSB is in the process of removing Putin from office and seizing power. All the facts are there, and basically, the links and connections between the facts clearly show that a coup is currently taking place in Russia. How do you like that? Do we believe it? Ukraine is undermining the throne of the Belarusian dictator Lukashenko. Together with the Belarusian opposition, Kyiv is working on the task of regime change in Belarus. Because only a peace-loving and civilized neighbor, not dancing to Putin's tune, will give Kyiv confidence that from Belarus, there won't be another attack.
Ukraine is changing its strategy regarding Belarus. Now Kyiv won't wait for the situation in Minsk to change on its own and is starting to act.
We need to mobilize now to survive this difficult time and an uncertain time at that. As president, I don't know what to prepare you for.
It's worth noting that Ukraine doesn't intend to directly interfere in the politics of the neighboring state. However, it will much more actively show its interest in Belarus, ceasing to be Moscow's doormat. A clear sign of this was the meeting between Zelensky and Belarusian oppositionist Sviatlana Tsikhanouskaya, as well as the appointment of a representative for Belarus in Ukraine.
With Ukraine, we have a huge number of topics. The information struggle against Russian propaganda, aid to Belarusian volunteers currently defending Ukraine, and countering Lukashenko's provocations as well. We have a vast amount of information from inside Belarus about the Russian military presence, Oreshnik missiles, and nuclear weapons. And we will share this information, whether it's intelligence or classified.
Moreover, Europe also intends to deal with the Belarusian issue more actively. Primarily, experts explain, because Lukashenko's actions and rhetoric create real threats to the European Union.
There can be no peacetime, Pavel. We are preparing for war.
The deployment of the Oreshnik, the transfer of Russian troops, the construction of new military facilities. These are just the most obvious paths of escalation that Minsk is pursuing today. At the same time, the threat to Ukraine is also growing.
In Belarus, military special installations are being created for launching drones, Russian drones, across Ukrainian territory, so that the range and duration, the range would be shortened, as would the flight time.
Furthermore, according to intelligence from the Russian Federation, Putin wants to create a buffer zone around Ukraine, not only in the east, but also in the north.
First, relatively speaking, this is the first such option, to directly send Russian troops to the territory of Belarus, then use Russian troops to enter the territory of Ukraine. That is, to once again use Belarus as a bridgehead against the Ukrainian state, just as it was at the beginning of the full-scale invasion.
Realizing that Putin might drag him into the war at any moment, the mustache even started a military review. All for one thing: to admit his own army is not combat ready.
It was covered the way perhaps most of you would have liked. Because all the nastiness that exists in our army, and there's plenty of it, well, I wouldn't want to show it, first of all, to our potential adversaries and maybe even enemies.
At the same time, although Lukashenko evaded direct military aid to Moscow, today cooperation with the Russian Federation is gaining momentum. As of the end of last year, nearly 300 enterprises were working for the Russian defense industry. Minsk also approved a lot of logistical routes that work against Ukraine. Partly the mustachioed cartographer did this just to stay in office.
Lukashenko is now in such a bind, you see. It's clear that he's on edge. It's clear he's panicking and he doesn't know which way, from which side to even expect a blow. And internally, the situation among the population is sort of static, but it's tense.
Both Kyiv and Europe decided to take advantage of this, mainly through contacts with the opposition, which is increasing its network and influence inside Belarus.
After all, Lukashenko is aging. Lukashenko has no support base in Belarus. Society does not support the war, does not support integration with Russia. We feel this, we see it, including through the repressions, because every day people are detained for anti-war or anti-Lukashenko, some kind of protests or even online activities. And all of this could create a new situation for which we must be prepared. Whether it will be an internal, movement within the system itself, or perhaps something related to the streets. We can't predict exactly which scenarios because everything depends on the geopolitical situation.
As for Lukashenko, he understands everything too. The regime, which for the last 5 years has relied solely on Putin's bayonets, cannot exist indefinitely. And all that's left for the mustache man today is to visit factories and fish farms, as befits a supply manager.
This shows once again that he is in a very difficult psychological state. He is indeed preparing for the worst-case scenarios. He is responsible for these worst-case scenarios because he made Belarus dependent on the aggressor country. He put it in a dismal state. He brought our country's economy to a dismal state.
And most importantly, he put himself in the same position. After all, the vice from Russia and the EU is tightening. And any moment now, they'll crush the dictator who has sat on his throne longer than anyone in Europe.
Fedorov is becoming a significant trump card for Ukraine in the fight against Russian invaders. Thus, Ukraine has introduced a new model of warfare, drone assault units. This was reported by the Ministry of Defense. Such units combine aerial and ground unmanned systems with infantry into a single combat system. The ministry emphasized that this approach has already proven effective in the south, where significant areas have been liberated since February. More details on Fedorov's innovations coming up next.
Putin's occupiers are in the crosshairs. Ukraine is implementing a new model of warfare. We are talking about the creation of drone assault units. The new model combines aerial and ground drones with infantry into a single system, which allows for minimizing personnel losses and increasing strike accuracy.
Well, as of today, I essentially see a logical, quite predictable development of assault units into something that will change the face of future infantry worldwide, not just in Ukraine, but at least until the development of assault units into something that will change the face of future infantry worldwide, not just in Ukraine, but at least until the end of this century, since the infantryman and the unmanned systems that accompany him, reconnaissance surveillance systems, ground robotic complexes, as well as strike weapons, these are an integral part of today's infantry, and this will be integrated specifically into assault units.
It is planned that this experience will be scaled to all key areas of the front, finally cementing the dominance of unmanned systems in the strategy of modern warfare. And according to the Ministry of Defense, the use of the latest units has already demonstrated concrete successes in southern Ukraine.
At that time, the suppression of Russian positions was carried out in a combined manner, both with the help of the drone component and assault units. You could say it was a kind of testing of our capabilities, and it showed results. We not only stopped the Russian advance in the Huliai-Pol direction along the right bank of the Haichur River, but also in the area between the Vovcha and Vorona rivers. That is already the Dnipropetrovsk region, but also forced the Russians to move to the left bank of the Haichur River to pull back, leave their positions, and retreat.
According to Minister of Defense Mikhailo Fedorov, every meter of Ukrainian land cost the occupiers a price of enormous human casualties. The introduction of drone assault units, combining unmanned systems with infantry, will allow for much more effective combat against the Russian invaders.
Mikhailo Fedorov is a person who is technically very well, has a very good technical background, is technically well informed about what is happening in the troops and what the troops need. Fresh blood has finally, at long last, entered the Ministry of Defense, certainly not some stale, senile, pension age or temporary blood that is the blood of a time server. It's about a specific change from within the very concept of the Ministry of Defense and its approach to further decision-making regarding how Ukraine should win this war.
Although Mikhailo Fedorov has only been in the post of Minister of Defense since January, he is actively implementing a technological approach to warfare. On April 15th, at a Ramstein format meeting, Fedorov noted that Ukraine's air defense has significantly strengthened. The interception rate for cruise missiles was 80%, and the interception rate for drones exceeded 90%. And this is despite a very difficult winter, when the Russian Federation tried to destroy the Ukrainian energy sector.
On the night of April 15th to 16th, we even witnessed how our air defense systems handled practically most of the targets. Short-range air defense shot down the maximum number of possible enemy drones. Medium-range air defense, including our Aviation, F-16 fighters and MiG-29, shot down Kh-101 missiles. And 19 missiles out of 20 were shot down, which is practically an absolute indicator of efficiency. But we still have problems with ballistics.
The Ukraine Defense Contact Group, during the Ramstein meeting, agreed on support for the country's air defense and the supply of missiles for the systems Patriot. Also, Germany is investing $4 billion in strengthening air defense. Great Britain is providing the largest support package in the field of drones. This year, Estonia is joining the air defense reinforcement under the Pearl program.
This is first and foremost a strengthening of the capabilities of the Ukrainian Defense Forces in conducting both counter-offensive operations and accordingly so-called active defense. But also a very notable statement by the head of NATO that the side will receive military support from our European partners in the amount of about 60 billion euros.
Protecting the Ukrainian sky has become not just a security issue, but a powerful impulse for the development of the military-industrial complex and communication with European partners.
Not just at the level of simply saying supply us with Patriot system launchers, supply us with surface-to-air missiles like the PAC-3 for the Patriot SAM system, but also let's communicate and collaborate at the level of actually creating and developing our own air defense system, one that is not only inexpensive and cheap, but also highly advanced, high-tech and fully functional when it comes to intercepting and neutralizing ballistic missiles. This approach would allow us to be more self-reliant and better prepared for future threats.
According to Bloomberg estimates, Ukraine has already turned into one of Europe's largest sites for combat testing of drones. New solutions are tested right on the battlefield, and successful developments are immediately launched into large-scale production.
A fierce Dmitry Medvedev is once again hurling threats toward the West. Now Medvedev's wrath has fallen on Ukraine's partners for supplying drones to Kyiv. The Russian Ministry of Defense echoes Al-Kodimon, having published the addresses of European drone manufacturers. So, do Western countries have something to fear? Or is this just more empty rattling of the air? Let's watch. The Putin regime is once again resorting to the language of direct threats.
This is a symptom of the Russian regime's impending strategic defeat.
And they are doing it so openly for the first time. The perpetually drinking deputy chairman of the Russian Security Council, Medvedev, threatened European countries with strikes on their territory.
When the possibility of a strike becomes a reality will depend on how the situation develops. Sweet dreams, European partners.
These statements were made as the Russian Ministry of Defense published a list of European companies that Moscow claims are involved in producing drones and military equipment for Ukraine.
A significant increase in drone production for the Kyiv regime is planned through expanded funding for Ukrainian and joint ventures located in European countries for the production of attack drones and their components.
The list includes 11 branches. Among them are facilities in Great Britain, Latvia, Lithuania, the Netherlands, Poland, and the Czech Republic, as well as Germany, Spain, Italy, Israel, and Turkey.
We view this decision as a deliberate step leading to a sharp escalation of the military-political situation across the European continent and the creeping transformation of these countries into Ukraine's strategic rear.
In essence, this is no longer just a warning. It is a public marking of targets that Moscow effectively links to potential strikes.